Let's go to our lead story now. With this week, the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Zizi Kodwa, appointed a new board for Boxing South Africa, which will be led by Sifiso Shongwe as its chairperson. Shongwe joins us in studio today to chat about that and their way forward as you guys begin your three-year term. Term this month, actually. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for coming through. Firstly, begin on the 12th of October. I'm sure the pressing issue is a permanent appointment of the CEO. How long are you anticipating that should take from advertising the post to actually appointing the right person?
I think the Minister, Zizi Kodwa, stated how paramount it is that we place a permanent CEO. He did put a deadline to say, look, in 3 months he wants the permanent CEO in the office and working. And, just to stabilize the organization, from a leadership perspective, and as well get operations back on track.
Who's responsible for that appointment?
At this point in time, we will be putting the post out as the board. We will obviously put the criteria together with the kind of candidate we're looking for, and once that has gone to market and the HR process then starts of then sifting through those candidates, the interview process will start.
Yeah, it's no secret that the previous board came under heavy criticism for a number of things. What for you is a high priority of things to fix?
I think one of the things that we need to fix operationally is to ensure that everything that Boxing South Africa does conforms to the Act, of the Boxing Act of 2001. We need to make sure that promoters and managers are working between the Act and the regulations. Once we can shore that up, I'm sure we'll start minimizing a lot of the issues.
Yeah, talk about finances was something that's that was heavily monitored by the public. When will you get a chance to look at the books to see where Boxing South Africa's financial state, what it is at least?
Currently, we're still in the process of onboarding. I think once everyone's onboarded, we have a handover with the outgoing board. I think once we will have a chance to sit down as the new board and have a look at the books, look at the state of boxing, and then we'll be able to then issue a statement of the current state of affairs and what our approach will be going forward.
What do we know about the previous CEO's payment? There was a report that the previous CEO being Mufat Mqeti, was earning around 120k, and he had a settlement fee of 15 million rands. Is that information that you're privy to?
Not at this stage. I wouldn't be able to comment to that on certainty, Kate, but I'm sure at a later stage there might be some revelations to that regard.
Let's talk about something you're much familiar with, which is being with promoters. As somebody who's a previous promoter yourself, are you happy with how they performed this last couple of years? Being
a promoter is one of those challenging, parts of boxing in and of itself. I think from, having to find resources as in funding, putting the bouts together, putting on a show as a promoter, it's one of the most challenging things that you can take on in responsibilities in boxing. So I think the current promoters are, in earnest, are going out there, and you look at the number of developmental tournaments that are going out, the promoters are really putting their best foot forward. But as Boxing South Africa, we need to make sure that the custodians of boxing, they are supported so they can undertake their duties. So you want promoters so boxers can box, managers can manage, and trainers can train, but everything starts with the boxer. We're all in boxing because of the boxer, so we need to make sure that we have an approach that keeps that in mind, and that as we go forward as an organization, we know that we are putting the boxer's needs and requirements first.
You didn't tell me if you were happy with how they performed.
I think overall they've performed to the best of their abilities and current resources that they have.
Babe, you're ready for presidency. But part of what was probably worrying, and which brings me to my previous question, is the fact that there were cancelled fights under the previous board, and there were no sanction for promoters who didn't do anything with regards to that. I mean, obviously there were certain things that contributed to that, but are you then going to try and enforce the rule that the purse for the fight needs to be secured perhaps 2 weeks before, because there is a rule that you guys have in boxing with that, so that fights don't get cancelled due to finances at least?
Firstly, Kate, I just want to put on the record that it's not actually a rule but a law. It's enshrined in the Boxing Act. So we need to work within those confines. And then we also need to make sure that we understand the promoters' constraints in that regard. And then we try to find a way that we can best support and make sure that there's less cancellations going forward and there's less disappointment for boxers.
And how do you plan on protecting boxers when something like that does happen, where promoters for whatever reasons, fights do get cancelled?
Within the current provisions of the Act, there is the 10%, which is meant to be paid beforehand by the promoter in the event that there's a cancellation, that could be issued to the main and main supporting bout. But obviously, you've got the other fighters on the undercard who, you know, it's at times that doesn't trickle down to. And at times, we need to make sure that those payments are being made to those boxers, and if there's a cancellation at way, that the boxers are paid as per agreed with the promoter. So we need to make sure from internally we are doing our due diligence and following up and making sure that purse monies are being deposited into the promotional accounts of the various promoters, and that when those purse monies are not paid, the appropriate action is taken so that the boxer is least affected and given sufficient notice. It's very difficult for a boxer to get prepared for 8 weeks only to be faced with disappointment. It's a very hard life. People forget that most boxers, by the time they get into the ring, that money is much needed because they already owe some people, because some boxers have dual, you know, careers, and some of them have to put that on hold, so they miss out on income, and, you know, they have to kind of find a gap finance to allow them to get into the ring and fight. So by the time they get paid, that money is much needed.
Yeah, you know, you speak about obviously the boxer being the most affected, but you also speak about the certain, individuals within the boxing space, especially, who don't get those resources that they need, and sometimes it's usually the top boxers that are looked after. But female boxers, you probably fall under that category of, you know, being the bottom of the food chain, so to speak. So, what will be done to improve women's boxing in this country?
I think we need a revitalization of the Women in Boxing program. We need the right people in that program who are passionate about women's boxing, and we need to engage promoters that, you know, the women's boxing is not just, you know, a nice to have, but, you know, it's a prerogative that, you know, we'd like to push to have women boxing, but not just women boxing on the undercard, looking at your 4-rounders, 8-rounders, but fighting for international titles, fighting for international titles when they're available. You know, we have some great female boxers here in the country, and I think they have an opportunity to make a difference on the world stage. It's hard enough without the regularity of fight. The current state of female boxing right now, what you find is a lot of rematches because there's not a big pool of ladies. So widening that pool, looking to find boxers over the continent and start bringing boxers internationally to bring that experience to women's boxing, so we can raise the level and the ability of our boxers to compete internationally. Yeah,
you don't have to go far. KZN and all the way down to the Eastern Cape, you'll find many female boxers.
But per division, if you look at it comparatively to the male, the number of registered boxers per division is not as much. And once they get to the top, in terms of the rankings, they end up fighting each other multiple times.
Yeah, and so in that, I mean, you do talk about, obviously you need to go find these boxers, but what are you doing to find them, to ensure that they're actually attracted to not just doing this as a part-time thing that looks cool, whatever I can do now and then, but to actually invest not just their time, but also invest themselves, immerse themselves fully into the sport, because now they're looking to you guys and what you guys can do.
I think it starts with access to being able to watch boxing on television, bring back that profiling for the sport, but also with the developmental tournaments, make them attractive so young men and women can see themselves within their heroes, can see an opportunity as an alternative career, whereas some people may not have hope and are in desolate situations. They can look to boxing to say, listen, this could be my way of uplifting myself and my family out of the current situation that I'm in. So we need to make sure that there's an opportunity for them to get into the ring, to get exposure, to get to gyms, to start the boxing journey. It is a journey because, you know, the first thing you got to learn is how to jab. And, you know, that in itself is a journey and a challenge. But once they start moving up the ranks, they need to be supported. They need to be given the opportunities. They need to be given the bouts on your high-profile boxing cards. They need to be given that exposure so they can secure top management, they can secure sponsorship, and that's how that wheel starts to flow for them.
Yeah, talk about the role that someone like Casper Nyovest has played in the sport, and what sort of that kind of because you in your previous involvement with boxing, you quite like the entertainment side of it, to ensure that obviously you broadcast the right product, that the quality that a broadcaster will be attracted to you. But also you look at someone like Casper Nyovest and the entertainment aspect of boxing that he's reintroduced, so to speak. What are you having conversations with more of those? Is that something that you guys look to sort of like, I don't want to say piggyback off, but like it's almost introduced a market that is not necessarily a boxing market, but
I think looking at the more the lifestyle element of boxing, thinking about a product that is more than just boxing but entertainment, I think is very key. What Casper's brought to the game, he's brought a platform, you know, of millions and millions of listeners and followers of his, but he brought to something that he loves and he enjoys. And, you know, it's not just predominantly, you think of it as a sideshow, but, you know, in terms of how those bills are marketed, put together, the quality of the fights, I think they're doing a lot. So you see a big growth, a boom globally with your Logan Paul's, KSI's doing something similar, filling up, you know, the O2 arenas with boxing, and it's just YouTubers versus sidemen. This is what you're saying. This is where people will have interesting stories. And that kind of, like, if you look at that model, our boxers don't have those kind of platforms. They don't have that kind of following. So we need to build them up to a state that they can actually headline big bills and actually have a huge following and be known. And it starts from a management, marketing, you know, perspective, but also making sure that the TV and the various media platforms are there to profile the boxers so their profiles can grow within the media. You know, sit here and do interviews with Kate, talk about the upcoming bouts, and that slowly but surely helps them build that cachet and build that following. Once they have that following, the sky's the limit.
Two things. For you personally, why get involved in such an organization?
I believe with the experience that I've had, you know, as a promoter, the kind of shows I've been able and how I think about the game, I think I can make a difference. So when I was asked to stand, you know, I raised my hand and said I'm willing to stand for the sport of boxing because I grew up watching the sport. I have a love for the sport that is second to none. So I really want to make a difference. That is why I'm sitting here in front of you, Kate.
And lastly, what sort of promise can you make to South Africans? I mean, obviously, we're not asking you to make, you know, to perform miracles as your new board, but what sort of key issues that you definitely as a new board are willing to take to make, sort of like undertake, and also make sure that when the new whoever comes next, you guys leave the sport and this organization, pardon me, in a better state?
I think from licensees' perspective, although, you know, other stakeholders within boxing, I think they can be looking forward to a board that's impartial, that is fair, and, you know, treats everyone the same. I think that may have been an issue in the past, but we're going to work our hardest to ensure that we are making sure that there's more coverage for tournaments. Boxers are getting, you know, that profiling that we're talking about, and we start thinking as more of the product as a media machine, and we start moving and raising the bar when it comes to boxing. Not just having fighters getting into a ring, but getting into a ring with entertainment and providing that entertainment.
Are you having a conversation with SABC Sport?
Those we can give those details at a later stage.
But is that something that you're looking to have? Because like you mentioned, growing up, we watched boxing at
those are the kind of engagements that are going to have to be held, especially now that there's a national promoter structure as well. They would need to be included in those talks. So those will be engagements that we'll need to have with the public broadcaster and various other public entities. You know, I don't think the state broadcaster alone can carry the burden of growing the profile of boxers. We need to also look within our borders and other, you know, international broadcasters who can get involved in the sport.
We're going to be holding you to that.
Thank you.
Sifiso Shongwe, the new chairperson of Boxing South Africa. Thank you so much for you coming through. We're looking forward to having you here again. Colin Nathan is somebody who lives on the stage, so you know he's very optimistic about what you and your board can do. So at least we've got that vote of confidence, just so you know. But thank you so much for coming through. We're really looking forward to seeing all the positive work that you guys can contribute towards Boxing South Africa.